Hey, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and welcome to week 43 of the Dear Jane Quilt Along. This is the last week of doing 4 center blocks and a border block. After this, next week we have 1 center block left, and I'm going to do a border block, and then we'll have 4 weeks of doing a corner block with 2 border blocks. And we're going to take the week of Thanksgiving off. Not going to have anything going on that week. Oh my gosh. And then I'm going to start figuring out how I want to organize putting all of this together, the whole quilt. So stay tuned for that too. Anyway, these blocks we got this week, I'm using a variation. I'm making 2 modifications. We've got some paper piecing with applique. We've got just applique. We've got everything this week, I think. Somehow the whole kitchen sink has been thrown at us. But it doesn't mean that it's hard. It's just, we just got a lot of different things going on. So, what I'm going to do first is populate my color chart, which is in the Dear Jane add-on. That's what I'm using. If you're new here, I'm using EQ8 with the Dear Jane add-on to do the Dear Jane Quilt Along. If you're following along, then you know all about it. Anyway, let's start with A7 Dad's Plaids, and I'm using variation 2 because that is the applique variation. Then I have B8 Water Lily, and this is going to be a modification that I'm going to do. And then H2 Jacob Anthony. This is another modification I'm going to make on this one. Actually, I need this color. There we go. And then M7, and I don't know if it's Junko's or Junko's Rose Garden. It was a friend of hers from Japan. That's her name, and she had a rose garden, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But that is M7. And then we have LS4 Virginia's Kite. Left side 4 Virginia's Kite. Rotate, rotate, rotate. So you can see we just have this little H5 to do. I don't know what I was thinking when I scheduled this out last year, but that's how I schedule it, and I'm sticking with it. So I've got 1 more center block. Look at this. It's beautiful. It's just so beautiful. Anyway, if you're new here, I have links to EQ8 and the Dear Jane add-on down below. And you can hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and you'll get notified of Dear Jane and all the other content we got going on here. So let's head over to our blockwork table and see what we got this week. The first block we have is A7 Dad's Plaids. This is actually variation 2 because all the others were piecing this block. And as I've said very many times, I'm not that skilled to do that type of piecing. It's too small for me. So I'm doing the applique version. You can see that it's applique right here. We've got 4 corner pieces. And we have 2 that are light and 2 that are dark, and our petals are in the opposite colors. So I printed templates. You only really need 1 petal. You've got the template for the corners, but what I actually did was I printed the template, but I went over to rotary cutting and figured out what size that square needed to be and cut my squares. So you can do it either way. So that's going to be pretty easy to put together. Our next block is B8, it's Water Lily. And I'm going to modify this because you can see we got some Y seams going on here. So I'm going to turn this into just 3 rows, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So let's go over to Draw. I want to make this up here and this down here its own row, so I'm going to just draw a line from the edge to this dot to the edge. I'm going to do the same thing down here. Alright, there we go. We have got 3 rows. Whoops. need to do this. Need to draw it all the way across. Okay, there we go. We've got 3 rows. So the top row and the bottom row can be paper pieced as is right now. What I'm going to do in the center here is I'm going to square it out. And right now that center block looks like an hourglass. But I am going to delete all these inner lines because it was all, as you can see, it was all one color anyway. So now the center block is an easy paper piece. So this is what it looks like. This is what we're gonna, I think we have to, yeah, we're gonna have to tell it to section this. So up here I'm gonna go to the sections tab and I'm going to hit start over, and I'm going to start at the top and do the section. Just the top row is a section. I'm going to group it. Bottom row, section, group, and the middle is its own section. So I got to grab all those pieces, group. Let's go over here to the other tab of numbering. Tries to number it for you. It's got it in light gray, so it's not actually numbered. What I'm going to do is on the top and bottom rows, I'm going to put the first piece in the middle, and then the 2 pieces, second and third pieces will be the outside. I'm going to do the same down here. And then in the middle, it's exactly how I want it to be. It's going to be C1 in the middle, and then we're going to go to the left, C2, C3, C4, and to the right, C5, C6, C7. So there we go. We have it sectioned, and we have it numbered. Let's take a look at this. Look at that. That is going to be a pretty easy paper piece now, instead of trying to do some Y seams. So there you go. That's how I'm going to do it. And if you use my paper piecing or my paper pieces that I put on my website, they will be for this modification that I've made. All right. There you go. That's how I modified B8 Water Lily. Okay, next block is H2 Jacob Anthony. And you can see we've got more Y seams here and here. So we'll have 4 of them. And what I want to do also, these are applique. It's not showing up as applique, but it is applique. Let's go over to draw. Yeah, you can see it here. There it is. You can see the applique. I'm going to turn off the applique, so I'm going down to the applique tab at the bottom. I'm just going to hit the little I and come back to easy draw. I want to take these outside lines and straighten them with this line right here. So let's edit. I'm going to grab the node. I'm just going to do my best to bring it down to as straight as I can get it. It's not going to be perfectly straight, but when we get to the block, I'll show you that. All right. Bring it up to there. See, that's not perfectly straight, but, and there. So now what we're going to have is 2 short pieces on the left and the right side that we can add to it, and then we can add the top and bottom to it instead of having Y seams. So, still looks exactly the same. And when we print out the foundation, this is, and it's weird because this one is also printing out the applique. This is the second time that's happened. I don't know. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to look into it. I don't know why it's doing that. So, there you go. That's what our paper pieces look like. And I'll show you what to do with that little notch. You can see it right there. What I do with it when I get to it. So, it's not a big deal. All right. That is H2 Jacob Anthony modified for no Y seams. Next is M7 Junko's Rose Garden. Not sure how to say it. This is all applique, and you can see that right here. So you're gonna, what we're gonna do is we're gonna print out templates, and we really only, there's only one center template. We only need 1 half moon and 1 petal, so you could delete the other half moons and 3 of the petals, bring it all over to 1 page, and print it out. And that's all we need for that, and that's pretty easy to do. So there you go. And last is LS4 Virginia's Kite, and that has applique on it. So this is what it looks like colored. We go back to draw. Let's turn off our applique, and you can see this seam there. I almost took it out, so I didn't. It's all white or light background, but I realized that this applique right here butts up against that seam, so we pretty much know where to put it. So I think that's a good reason to leave it in, so I did. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You've got 1 big section on the bottom, 2 sections for the next row, and then 2 sections in this row right here. They're just kind of small, but they won't be that hard to put together. And then, let's see, it looks like this. You can move them around. They're pretty small to fit everything on 1 page. So it'll fit all on 1 page for the paper piecing, and then you'll need to go over to templates, and we only need to print this piece, and this piece. So you can delete everything else. So there you go. Pretty easy. Few modifications, some applique, but other than that, it won't take too long to put it together for this week. So let's get started on our blocks, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Let's get started on week 43, the last week of 4 center blocks and a border block. From here on out, it gets pretty light on our blocks until we finish them all. So we're going to start off pretty easy with for me it's easy. I chose variation 2 of A7 Dad's Plaids. This is what it looks like. I don't want to sew these curves here. So I chose variation 2, which is the applique version. So we need to, I actually looked at the rotary cutter instructions so I could find out what size these are, or you could just use your template. But that's what I did, and so I cut these 4 out. They're going to get put together with the colors in the opposite corners. And then we're going to put our applique in, and the applique, like the dark applique, is going to go in the light. Light applique is going to go in the dark. So pretty easy start. There's my background. I ironed towards the dark in the rows and then ironed it open when I put it together. Now we just need to place our applique, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. Corners, putting the points in the corners, seeing if I like it. I can always rearrange it before I actually tack it down if I look at it and I'm not happy with it. So there you go. Easy start. A7 Dad's Plaids variation 2, the applique variation. Next block is B8 Water Lily. I have modified this so it's 3 rows, no Y seams, and I even modified this row so there would be less seams in it of the same color. This is the block we're going for. That's what we'll get in the end, and I think it's going to be a whole lot easier. And if you want to see how I modified it, you can go back to the beginning of this video and watch the EQ8 version. All right, so I've got my applique, which is the corner petals, drawn out and put onto my fabric here. These are for all the dark pieces you see. These large ones are in the corner, and these little rectangles are right here. So I am going to show you how to start one of these edges, and then I'll at least do half of this one, because the other half will be exactly the same, this center row. Also, I have my cut pieces if you would like to use them on my website, and that link is in the description below this video. To do one of these outer rows of this block, we will need 2 of the big white squares and a dark square. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tack my square down so then I can trim it. It's plenty big. It's covering the whole dark area there, so I'm going to get it tacked down. I've tacked it down, so now I can trim it. There we go. Now I can line up my large white piece, and what I'm going to do is the seam allowance is right here. So I'm going to put my point as close as I can to the seam allowance because it's going to be going out this way. We have to get out to there and there. So just pull your corner down as close as you can to this, and you should have plenty of room to make it out to the edge. And then I'm going to get it sewn on in exactly the same way for the other side of this block, and this this section, and this section will be exactly the same way. Here's my first 2 sections put together. They weren't that hard, especially if you can start them and get them trimmed. Next is our center section. Our number 1 is in the middle, and then we're going to move over to our number 2 triangle. So I have laid that out here. So we need 2 of these dark squares. I'm just going to put them together. I'm going to lay them 1/4 inch over number 2. And I'm going to sew right here on the line in between 1 and 2. There's my first 2 pieces. So now we can trim up for our 3rd piece, which is going to be our white rectangle. So I'm going to grab my rectangle, and it's plenty long. It actually goes off the paper on both sides. So now I can sew between 2 and 3. There's my 3rd piece. My number 4 piece is going to be exactly the same. So we'll get it trimmed up. And lay out another rectangle exactly the same way. And it's going off my paper, so there's plenty there. I'm going to sew on the line now between 2 and 4. 5, 6, and 7 are going to be exactly like these 3, so I'm going to get everything sewn up and trimmed up. There we go. I got them trimmed up. I am now going to just put my rows together. I will iron these open, and then we can put our petals in the corner. There we go. There's my block. I'm getting my applique put on. The corner of the petal is pretty close to the interior corner, and then I'm just pointing the outer part of my petal towards the corner there. So there you go. That is B8 Water Lily, modified for no Y seams in 3 rows. Next block is H2 Jacob Anthony, modified with no Y seams. Again, I don't know why, but the applique printed out on my foundation paper pieces. So these 2 pieces are actually applique. I did modify this for no Y seams so that when we build this center section here, you can see it here, we will be putting short sides on, and then we'll put long sides on. That's how I modified it. I will just put together one of these sections here, and then we can put the whole block together. I have my long white rectangles for the outside, and then my dark rectangles and my light rectangles are the same size, and that's for the interior. And then I have my 2 applique pieces, and again, that's what we're going for. Here are my outside pieces. I've tacked them to the papers so that I can trim them up and use them on the outside. And then I've gone ahead and put these 2 pieces together, which is pretty, it's identical to this. They do start in different spots, but that really doesn't matter that they do that. So it's going to be essentially the same. All right, we're going to start on this side and work across. And I've drawn that out over here. And all we need are these pieces, which are the same size. For the most part, they're the same size. And number one is a dark. So I'm going to put my dark piece down. I'm going to lay it 1/4 of an inch over 2. And there's my seam allowance, and there's my seam allowance. So we have plenty of room. I'm now going to sew between 1 and 2, and I'm going to lock stitch at both these points. There's my first 2 pieces, so we can trim for our 3rd piece. The 1/4 inch seam allowance we need. And next piece is going to be a dark piece. So I'm going to grab it. Pretty much lines up with my trim there and there. Past my seam allowances here. I'm going to sew between 2 and 3. 4, 5, and 6 are exactly like this. So I'm going to finish this out and get everything trimmed out. It's taken me a few, obviously, sewings to get my brain figured out on this block for these outer rows. I'm looking at EQ8. I've got my A1 up here in this corner. I've got my G section over here with the wider part at the top and the narrow part at the bottom. And then it's the opposite for E1 over here. You can see that I sewed it on the wrong side. So now I'm going to sew it on the right side, and hopefully I can get a square block when I start putting everything together. But anyway, I'm looking at EQ8, and that's how it goes. So I am going to put this side on now. Just going to rip that piece of paper off, and it looks like the corner of the G section lands at the corner of our piece underneath, and the point of our G section is on the edge of our piece underneath. So I'm going to get that sewn. I'm going to iron towards the G piece. That looks a little better. So let's go back to EQ8 and look at it. And I need my D piece on the top. And it's going to set like this. Let's see which whir. It looks like it works. I'm squaring it up on my board here. And then the F piece goes down here. So we should end up with a block that looks like that. All right, I went ahead and put this one on just to make sure. And I'm straight up this edge, and I'm straight across here, so that is a good sign. So I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to line my point up with the edge of my bottom piece. The other thing is there is a slight little bend in this piece because I couldn't do exactly a straight line because of EQ8. And that, right where it bends right there, is where my seam is, right here. So when I hit this, I'm just going to make that tiny little pivot there. And I did that down here. So that should help straighten things out. So on the line, line your point up with the bottom edge of your fabric. Sew to this point, which is right at that seam underneath, and then make that slight little pivot. Needle down, pivot, and go this way. There we go. That is 5 inches. I may need to trim just a little bit there. I'm not sure, I can't see that well, but I did do, this is within my seam allowance here. I did do my pivot right here. And then I came over, and on the back, I just right on the other side of this seam right here, I clipped it, not into the threads. And then I did the same thing over here. I gave it a little clip, which kind of helps it out. So, hey, there we go. Not one of my better blocks, but it is 5 inches and it'll work. Woo! Let me know how it went for you. I don't know why. Maybe because it's lunchtime? That was a little rough for me. I got so excited to be done with that block, I literally forgot to do the applique. So let me get these cut out. They just go in the corners. They go in the bigger corners. And what I mean by bigger corners, where there's more fabric right here. And it butts up against the corner of that center, and then this point goes towards the outside point. So that's pretty easy. Easiest part of this block. Although the foundation paper piecing the center wasn't that hard. It was those edges that gave me a problem. So there we go. All right, there's my applique, and now I'm done with this block. Next up is Junko's Rose Garden. Junko, it says, is the name of Brenda Papadakis. She has a friend named Junko in Japan. And she does have a rose garden, so that's why it's named Junko's Rose Garden. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It looks like Junko's. It could be Junko's. Okay, so this one is an applique. I have my white background, which is the 5-inch square, like all of our blocks are. And then I've gone ahead and printed out my templates. So you only really need one of the petals and the half or the quarter moons. And then you can just copy it 4 times. So let me get my appliques cut out, and then we'll come back and figure out how to put these pieces on here. I got my applique pieces cut out, and the first thing I'm going to do is crease my background block on the diagonal. Lay my centerpiece down so that each point lands on one of those creases. That way it should be centered in the middle. There we go. And then our half moons will go out and meet these points out here. Like that, all the way around. So I'm going to do that and see how it turns out. I guess the nice thing is if it looks a little bit off, my colors are so close. I don't have a real dark color going on here, so you won't notice an imperfection as much. There we go. Points to points. All right, there we go. That's what that looks like. And now these just go in the corners. And you're going to line up one point right in here, and the other point will land on your crease. So there you go, that's pretty easy. Didn't need to make a lot of creases, just the diagonal creases to put this together. I think when I get this appliqued, it will stand out a little more too. And last piece. All right, I now can get that ironed down because I like it. I think it looks good. And we'll be done with that block, which is M7 Junko's Rose Garden. Last is LS4 Virginia's Kite, left side 4. This is, that's what the block looks like, and these bottom 3 pieces here are applique, and I've got those printed and then transferred over to my fusible webbing. We got some pretty little pieces here, but 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are just 2 pieces. So I'll probably demonstrate at least getting started on these 2 pieces right here. So, and this one. My paper piece cuts here are pretty simple. I do have my paper piece cuts out on my website, and the link is at the description down below this video if you want to use the same cuts. So this large piece is right there, and then this rectangle goes right here. So that's for the bottom piece. And then all the purple is all the purple you see up here. And then I will have to use my cheat sheet to see which these are, but if I had to guess, it would probably be these tiny little pieces you see here. So let me get set up and ready to start putting these together. I'm going to start with the A section, and I had considered taking this seam out because I didn't think it made any sense, but then once I really started looking at it, one of our appliques will butt up against that seam, so I thought, oh, that's a good reason to have it in there, so I left it in there. All right, I'm just going to put my paper over top of my large square here, and I'm going to tack it down. All right, I've tacked my piece down so that it doesn't scooch on me, and I'm now going to trim for my next piece. So pretty easy. So there you go. That's how you do that first piece. And I'm just going to line it up, and I'm going to sew on the line right there. So now I can have that seam to line up my applique with. Here's the A section I just showed you. And here's all the sections that just have 2 pieces in them. Those are easy to put together. All right, so these 2 sections are left, and they're pretty small, especially this one. I think I might try pinning them. Don't usually pin them, but I don't think I could get a small enough, I don't think I could tack it down and with a small enough stitch, so let's see. It's plenty big. I'm going to pin down here, and that way the head of my pin isn't near where I'm going to be folding, and the same thing here. I could pin over here like that. All right, so those are on. We need to now trim so we can put our second piece on. That worked out good. Okay, there's that one, and then this tiny little one over here. And these are the squares I'm going to be using. Oh, this one's so small that this square is plenty big. I'm just going to center it. I'm going to lock stitch right there and then sew on out here. And the same thing up here. I'm going to lock stitch there and then sew out. All right, there's my first 2 pieces put on, and you can take your pins out or however you held it together. All right, there they are, my first 2 pieces. So this one just has 3 pieces, so I'm going to trim for the 3rd piece. And then this one has a 3rd piece over here that's, again, tiny. And we'll get that trimmed up. And these pieces are going to be just like the other 2 we just did. Ooh, that's so tiny. Center it, sew on the line, and lock stitch between, at that point right there. And then this one, same thing. Center it, and then we can sew on the line right here. And I'll probably lock stitch there too. All right, our D section is done. Our G section, we just need to add the top onto it now. So I only have 1 piece left, which is the piece I need. So I'm going to center it again. It's plenty big. It's off my paper, and it's going to go off the paper up here. So I'm going to sew now right here below G4, and then I'm going to get everything trimmed up. We'll get it laid out, and we'll get the applique on. Pieces are trimmed up, and I've got them laid out here. So doing the alphabet from bottom to top. We have A, and then we have B and C for the next row. D is its own row. E has the purple on it. F makes this row, and then we have the top here. So we need to put together these two rows right here first. And the notch on the bottom piece matches up here, and the corner lands up here on this piece. So I'm going to get that one sewn, and I'm going to iron these open, and then these two pieces go together. I line the seams up. These notches over here, this notch on the top one lines up. So line your seams up, and everything else should line up. There's a seam in both of these. Got my rows made, so now we can just start from the bottom and start putting them together. And it looks like the points, well, you'll have a couple little tails on either side with the points from the C row, the B and C row, I should say. All right, I think I'm just going to work from bottom to top, putting these together, and iron these open. There's my background done, the triangle. And then I've laid out my 3 appliques. So this one I brought down till I was about 1/4 of an inch from each side. Then I did this one and made sure I was 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. And 1/4 of an inch from the sides. And then this one I kind of centered between these two. So my point looks at this point, and it's kind of pretty much lined up with this point up here. So that's how I'm laying them out. It looks like Dear Jane's. And there you go. Let me know if you're going to do the same thing and how it turned out for you. So all I need to do is get these fused down. So this is LS4, Virginia's Kite. All right, there's week 43 finished up. We are going to have every center block filled in here except for one. I mean, I was trying to imagine what this looked like, but it's just even more beautiful than I thought. And this is just my picture quilt. I mean, wait till my quilt goes together. Wait till your quilt goes together. I mean, the ones that I've been seeing on social media, the fabrics are just absolutely gorgeous. So it's going to be really pretty. All right. Let's start populating my quilt. We got A7. A's done. B8. B's done. H2. That one gave me a little bit of problem. I don't know what was going on in my brain. But got it done, got it straight, got it 5 inches square. H2, so that leaves just H5. M7, M's every row but H is done. And then my LS4. All right, look at that. We have got, next week is going to be a center block and a border block. And then we'll have 4 weeks of a corner block and 2 border blocks, and we'll be taking Thanksgiving off. So, not much more time. And then I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to schedule out finishing this quilt out. But anyway, there you go. Let me know how it went for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of everybody. I love seeing your blocks. They're so pretty. Everybody's blocks are just so pretty, and I can't wait to see the finished quilt. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!